The New Testament is a collection of 27 texts or books. These books were written in a variety of different places by a variety of different people, and in this way, the New Testament is less like a book as we know it and more like an anthology or a library. Christians call the New Testament to distinguish it from what Christians call the Old Testament and what Jews call the Hebrew Bible or the Tanakh. Like the New Testament, the Old Testament is a collection of texts, 39 of them in the Christian tradition, but these books are not about one single individual like the New Testament is. Rather, they're something like the national literature of Israel and Judah. For Christians, the New Testament continues and, in a way, completes the events that began in the Old Testament. Thus, the New Testament is canonical, that is, it's deemed an official authoritative collection in Christianity, but not in Judaism. The texts of the Old Testament were written between the 10th and 2nd centuries BCE, a span of about 800 years. By comparison, the New Testament was written in a relatively short period of time, about 5 decades or 50 years. Most, but not all, of the Old Testament is written in Hebrew, and all of the New Testament is written in Greek. Like the Old Testament, the New Testament can be divided into 4 subdivisions. The first of these is called Gospels. There are 4 of them. They are all narrative or story in form, and they tell the events of Jesus' life, death, ministry, and resurrection. The Gospels are overlapping and competing traditions. They're not all exactly the same as one another. 3, the so-called Synoptic Gospels, Matthew, Mark, and Luke, contain similar materials to one another, and some of these authors appear to directly copy from the others. The Gospel of John, the Maverick Gospel, stands alone. It contains a handful of the same stories about Jesus as the Synoptic Gospels, but it's largely distinct in its materials. The second division is also narrative, or story in form. There's only one book in this division. The division takes its name from that book, Acts. Acts tells the story of what happened with Jesus' followers after his death and resurrection, and how the Christian movement spread across the Roman Empire. The third division, and the one that contains the most New Testament books, is letters. These are subdivided by the 13 that are attributed to Paul, called Pauline letters or epistles, and those written by other authors, called Catholic letters or epistles, or general letters or epistles. The final division, like Acts, only contains one text, an apocalypse called Revelation. While in popular imagination, Revelation's a blueprint for how the world will end, this isn't what it's really about. Rather, as is common of apocalypses in the ancient context, the book purports to pull back the veil of history for a privileged individual who's called a seer, and it shows them a vision about why things are happening the way they are and what might happen in the very near future. 27 books, 4 subdivision, 1 collection, all written in Greek in about a 50-year period. What unites all 27 texts of the New Testament is that they are all in some way about a Galilean Jew who was named Jesus. This Jew lived in the 1st century of the Common Era, a time when Rome was the world's superpower and Judea was under their control. While not all texts in the New Testament narrate the events of Jesus' life, they do all reflect upon his significance in one way or another. There's no text in this 27 books collection for which Jesus is not ultimately significant.